was blind, but now I can.
Yeah, calisthenics number 12. Yeah. Fly robotics. Bifocals, my only purpose is to feed the locals. I'm spreading love when I see you and gotta approach you. I see the goodness in you, I wouldn't John Wick you. I know you hustling for your family just to pay the fiscal. I see the God up in you, He bless your physical. While we navigating problems, the world is abysmal. Skip the one up, let's get it to the center. Your house is big as mine, we can always help each other. Affirmation smother, it ain't even cost me a dime to uplift my brother. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Vulnerability is the New Sexy. I'm your host, as always, Joe Corley. I'm a black male therapist, really passionate about creating spaces where we can be real, raw, have conversation that promotes healing and growth. No toxicity in this dancery, as they say. And relationships are very important. They're very important for both sides of the street. Sometimes there's some difficult aspects of it, but for the month of February, I decided to do a 4-part series all about relationships. My goal is to give it to you honest. I want to help build, I'll give you tools to help build stronger relationships, healthier connections, and whether you're dating, married, or somewhere in between, we talking today. And, so today's episode is a 4-part series, and today's episode is about the foundation. Friendship, emotional connection, all the things that help build a healthy relationship. Some of the do's and don'ts we're going to get into. Two amazing couples with me. And I also got my mentor, good brother to my bottom of the screen here, Dr. Curtis, another black male therapist who has seen tons of couples, and he's going to help me out tonight. I was supposed to have my wife on, but as you see, she's not here. We got off the plane from Miami. Something hit her like a ton of bricks. So she sends her apologies. She asked me to hold it down for the queen. She'll be on the rest of the month, though. You will get to meet her. I promise she exists. So let me introduce the couples here. I got my y'all seen most of these people before, but haven't seen their significant others. My young brother Khalil up to the top. He's out here with his girl Jaden. So
what's going on, Coach?
Welcome to y'all. Glad to see y'all.
Everybody doing?
Everybody know the good brother Q, and he brought his significant other on the time. My good sister Toya. Crazy she want to be in. And like I said, my mentor, Dr. Curtis Hill, he's gonna come talk to us tonight about a few things and also discuss some things he's got going on for couples. So I appreciate all y'all coming to the show. Thank y'all for joining me tonight.
Thanks for having us.
So let's get right to it, man. Listen, I don't want you guys out there in the chat, man. If you got questions, if you got anything that's on your mind, or you hear something that brings up a question to you, please address it in the chat, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can tonight. Like I said, I myself see a bunch of couples. I wanted to wear 2 hats tonight. I wanted to be a husband and a therapist. But I'm, since my wife in here, I'm gonna go ahead and hold it down for the therapist with Dr. Curtis. Okay. Q.
Yes, sir.
Yes, y'all, man. How long y'all been married?
17.
17, okay.
17 years.
So y'all got 17. So me and Donna will be married 17 years also this month. So, I mean, there's a lot of history in that. But I know over time, we evolved. Y'all got married. Y'all was probably in your 20s, right?
Yeah. 26, actually.
26, right. So let me ask you some plain and simple. How did you know, for each one of y'all, how did you know your partner was the one?
Go ahead. It's your first time.
It sounds really cliche, but I felt like love at first sight when I met my husband.
Sucker shit.
I know. It's not even like me. But I did feel that. And after having some conversation and like the energy that I exchanged with him and that I felt with him from the very beginning just felt so natural and at home for me that I just never wanted to pursue anything after that.
It was that clear for you, huh?
It was crystal clear from
26?
day one.
Okay. What about you, Q?
Yeah, man, it was kind of the same thing. I was like maybe a year out of a relationship, and I was just like, man, like this sounds cliche too, but I'm like, Lord, send me somebody that I could just chill with and like, not keep going through these, running through relationships. And me and Toya met through her cousin. Like so we was at the basketball court. One of my friends was like, man, Tree cousin's coming to the park or whatever. He was like, man, she bad, bro. Like, wait till you see her. And like at first we didn't even speak, but we later on got up at a little like a housewarming, little party thing. And we talked and we had a little fun together. And then the next day we went out, man, we walked the beach on the north side of Chicago. We stayed with each other all day. Like, so it was just that connection. It was a connection. And, for me, it felt like, man, that's the one.
Is beaches in Chicago?
Oh, yeah, man. You ain't know?
Lake Michigan, that's the ocean.
I live right on the beach.
I had no idea. I had no idea. Only been to the taste of Chicago and Michigan Ave. I ain't seen no beaches, but hey,
yeah, for sure.
That's a dope story, man. I'm really glad to hear. Full disclosure, I've known Jatoya since we were 12 years old.
Little kids.
Yeah, little kids, man. So I remember the first time I met you, I said, "Damn, you finally found somebody to accept that crazy, huh?" Nice to meet you, brother.
Facts.
He can handle me, I guess.
Oh man, Khalil, Jaden, tell me, man, how long y'all been together?
We've been together for a little bit over 3 years now.
Yeah. Y'all have a lovely daughter, right?
Yes, we do.
So how did y'all decide to determine that y'all was gonna, and this was a person you wanted to invest your time in?
For me, just not feeling complete when I'm not with him, knowing that my life doesn't feel the same without him around, without his presence. So just seeing how strong of an entity he was in my life, just solidified that that's somebody I can't live without. So,
did y'all meet after high school?
Yes.
Okay.
While I was in college.
Okay.
All right.
How did you notice somebody you wanted to invest your time in, Khalil?
A little kind of the same along those lines. I was at a low point when we met, financially, spiritually, mentally, and I just felt like God had placed me in my life for a reason, and I just kind of seen my life turn for the better. Even when we did have the kid at an early point in the relationship, it was still kind of not even it wasn't much worry. I knew I had somebody that I could figure it out with, and so that's how I knew she was the one, man.
Oh man, that's beautiful, man.
Yeah,
How old are y'all now, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm sorry, Coach?
How old are y'all now, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 24.
I'm 23.
Okay, cool. All right.
Oh, dang, y'all still some pups.
Yeah, we still young ones. We trying to still figure it out.
So are we.
Yeah, I'll be looking forward to hear not just y'all takeaways, but also Q and Jatoya's takeaways by the end of the pod, man. I'm really curious what y'all come away with.
Absolutely.
Let me move to Dr. Curtis, man. Let me ask you something, Dr. Curtis. You see couples through all stages of, you've seen premarital, you've seen newlyweds, you've seen long time married. What are some of the common mistakes you think people make in the beginning when it comes to like building emotional connection?
Great question. And you're absolutely right. And the key is what you said, emotional connection. That's really what it is. And that's really the mistake, believe it or not. Most couples, they don't look at it as an emotional connection, or one versus the other see it as an emotional connection and the other one does not. So the big mistake is that they're not looking at this as being this is really about emotional connection versus just simply checking the boxes, right? Hey, yeah, she looked this way or he looked that way, or she had that, she got a good job, he got a good job. We had this list that we kind of pull together. And that's typically what you use as a basis, all your commonalities per se, right? We got all this stuff in common. And so therefore, that's why this should work. And they actually have missed out on the main thing. And that is that how you're connecting emotionally, believe it or not.
Right. And I'll add to that, man. When I'm going through with couples, a lot of times people are looking for unmet needs. right? So they're looking for safety in their partners and they're not really taking the time to invest in that emotional connection. So there's a lot of things that you miss in the beginning that are actual current needs. You know, you're looking at unmet needs from your childhood. You know, you didn't feel safe in this situation, so you want somebody to be a protector. You were broke, so you want somebody that has money, you know, or you want somebody at least to be stable where you don't have to take care of them. And you're not looking at building that emotional connection. And that's something I can probably say that, you know, I probably didn't lean into, I didn't understand totally, you know, until at least 12, 13 in. And I started, you know, start thinking, okay, now I understand what I need to do in order to stay connected. But one more thing for you, Dr. Curtis, let me ask, how important do you think friendship is when you're starting to build a relationship?
I think it's huge. I mean, I kind of go through a list of stages, and I'm gonna kind of throw them at you real quickly. I talk about the fact that, hey, your first stage in relationship really should be friendship, and unfortunately, a lot of those traditional ways of actually becoming a friend has changed. So when you really, nowadays when you get ready to start to date, half the time you're trying to start your date by going on a dating app or something along those lines. And so really you're starting out as if you're dating, and there's really not a friendship that has even been established. But I believe that, hey, that the idea that friendship should be that first stage in any relationship. And then from there, you go into dating. And then, of course, dating to dating more seriously. And then, of course, engagement and then marriage. So, yeah, I think that's the key more than anything else. That you normally start building your friendship while you're in a dating dynamics in a relationship for the most part, versus saying, hey, taking the pressure off of one another by saying, yeah, I may be interested in you, but I just really want to be, what it's like just to be your friend.
Right. And we're gonna come back to you. We're gonna come back to you later and talk about what it looks like when people sometimes miss that boat in the beginning, and what they can do to make emotional connections later on in the marriage or in a relationship. Like I said, man, I stumbled and bumbled through 17 of these things. And in the beginning, if it wasn't for the fact that we were friends, I don't think we would have survived. Our friendship carried us through a lot of tough and difficult moments. But her being my friend before anything made it possible. So I think that's very important. And like I said, if y'all out there, you in the chat, talk to me about, what does emotional connection mean to you? All right. And I'm gonna pose that to y'all too. When you hear that, Q Jatoya, when you hear emotional connection, what does that actually mean to you?
I mean, I think it starts with a spiritual bond. Like, me and Toya, like, we grew up in the church, so I feel like it started with a spiritual bond first, and friendship. Getting to know each other beyond the physical, and just connecting on a spiritual level and knowing the wants of each other by not going through trials and tribulations, but at least trying to make it your business to know about your partner, and spiritually as well, first and foremost.
Yeah. What you, Jatoya?
Yes, I agree. And I also just put a lot of energy into what we have as a friendship. So sometimes when you've been together as long as we've been together
24 years.
24 years. So beyond the marriage, we've been together a really long time. And sometimes he gets on my nerves real bad.
Mm-hmm.
So him being my friend, allows me to be able to communicate in a different type of way than if I just thought he was cute. Like, I think he's really cute, but it's deeper than that. And so just being able to have communication like I would have with my friends allows us to get through some of the difficult times, when things are not always easy. So the friendship is definitely critical.
For sure. For sure. Jaden, you said something earlier about not being able to, see yourself without him. And I want to ask you a question before that. That was kind of one of the things somebody asked me when I was considering asking Donna to marry me. They've made it very simple for me. Like, can you vision your life without her? I don't know if I probably really wasn't ready. but to get married, but I could not envision my life without her. So I was like, okay, well, that made it easy for me. I'm gonna go ahead and, take this leap. But Jay, let me ask you, can you remember, I don't want to put you on the spot if it's difficult for you to pull up a memory, but can you remember like a time, like even a small moment where you felt like deeply connected to Khalil in the beginning?
Let's see. In the beginning, you said a specific memory. I can't. It's like from the time I met him, like I was with him every day after that. So it's like every memory was confirmation that like this is somebody I want to be with. Like he got on my nerves. I still want to be around him. Like there was never a moment because of the friendship that we had built. I feel like nowadays, at least I'm sure just in general, but especially in our generation, people don't really take the time to get to know anybody. Everything is very surface level. What can you provide to me? What can you do for me? Rather than just simply getting to know somebody, building a connection with somebody. And I feel like that's something that we took the time to do, which is why I feel like we're successful, having a kid pretty early on in our relationship. A lot of people our age can't and don't uphold that, relationship after a baby gets here. And I feel like because of our friendship and the fact that we just liked each other, so outside of love, we just like each other as people. I feel like that is what carried us through all of the hardships that we face.
How long were y'all together before y'all found out that y'all were having a baby?
Like 2 years.
Okay, so y'all got some time.
Yeah. So
with no wham bam situation.
Right. It was still quicker than expected,
but yeah,
the 2 years felt way longer than 2 years,
Yeah.
Okay. Let me ask you, Khalil, how were you with vulnerability before you got in this relationship, became a father? Were you somebody that was like openly, sharing of your feelings and things like that?
Not at all. Never been that way. Even since a little kid, my mom used to tell me I had to let people know what's going on. At least if I'm not gonna let people know what's going on, let her know what's going on. I heard it all my life. If you hold on to your emotions, one day it's just gonna bottle up and explode. And I was that type. I'm still that type. She still got to pull it out of me till today. Even when I may not be feeling it. I'm not the type of guy that's just gonna come out and tell you, hey, I'm not having a good day and break it down to you. But since I've been with Jaden, I've seen that's changed. I've been more comfortable into opening up. I'm not so opposed to it these days. So that's how my vulnerability has been.
Yeah. Have you discovered yet, that vulnerability is the way to strengthen your bond?
Absolutely. I see now, even when I do try to be vulnerable, how much better I do feel afterwards. I think before it was more so I was scared because I didn't know how a certain person would take what I'm telling them. If they would use it against me or if they would judge me for it or whatever the case may be. But like I said, being with Jaden and her being able to be that person that I can come to and be vulnerable to, although it's not something that I'm used to. I knew she was the one for that.
Yeah, man.
Sure.
Vulnerability is literally almost by definition, like fear of your weakest points or your weakest moments, you know what I mean? And being able to express those things and finding a space where you can feel safe to, share the things that you need to share, especially with the people who are assigned to love you. Dr. Curtis, man, let me toss to you, man. And we're talking about vulnerability now. You know what I mean? I know you big on that. So, how important is it in a relationship for us to be vulnerable in order to strengthen these bonds?
Well, I want to go back first of all about the emotional connections and so forth that's necessary, and then I want to kind of use that to kind of talk about vulnerability in of itself. I believe that's the anchor in relationships, and because if your relationship has to be anchored in the idea of you being emotionally, quote unquote, available to your partner, and if you can't then that's just early signs that you're going to have challenges in that relationship at some point down the line, because that's what you have to anchor yourself in. So with that being said, think about this in terms of vulnerability. My definition of vulnerability or the layman terms would be this: it's really about taking a risk. Vulnerability is really about taking a risk, believing that, hey, that you can take your heart, quote unquote, and you can put it in that your partner's hand, and they're gonna safely care for it. And as they safely care for it, what happens is that you don't have to be worried and be concerned about, hey, that because what you're doing by putting your heart in their hand, they're gonna in some form or fashion take that and use that against you. That's what my brother was just saying a few minutes ago. That's exactly what it is that safety is. That's really what it's all about. So when you can be vulnerable like that, that really actually moves you to that next step in terms of your development in your relationship. And that's really where empathy can occur. You move into empathy because you can be vulnerable, believe it or not.
Right. This makes me recall a time like early for the first portion of our marriage, we pretty much didn't have any problems. Right. We was really, living good. We had just moved to Texas, you know what I mean? And, it was really unbothered. And then, a little bit down the line, it was little spats here and there, but I had gotten laid off. And I think at the time we might've been, pregnant with Donovan, our youngest. And I did not handle that well, and I did not have the communication or the vulnerability to tell my wife that, one, I do not feel like a man in this moment. I know this now, looking back on it, but at the time I had no idea I was feeling like this. I do not feel like a man at this moment. I am not what I would consider masculine. So I'm coming off as irritated, angry, and then I actually sunk into an actual depression, right? I sunk into a real, and this is when it really, everything came up for me from my past that I didn't even know. I have a kind of a traumatic past, but it really wasn't really, weighing on me or weighing on my behavior until that moment. I have a family now. I have a new son on the way. I have a wife now. I need to care for these people. And if I don't do that financially, then I am not a man. And I just started feeling terrible. Had I, could I go back and talk to myself? Then I'm like, hey man, be vulnerable. Because what that did, my change in behavior, what that did to my wife was also something that took a toll on her and it took a toll on us. And I'm saying all this to lead to a question. I want y'all to kind of think about a moment, if possible, where you might have struggled with vulnerability, and talk to me how you got through that. I can say that again, going back to the friendship that we had is how I got through it, because we can always laugh together. So that's always going to carry us.
Yeah, for sure.
But avoiding, I was very avoidant. She was very avoidant. And that really took a long-term toll on us until just maybe the last couple of years or so, we're coming out of that and being able to talk to each other about these type of things. So, Q, Jatoya, do you all recall a moment, either one of you recall a moment where, lack of vulnerability kind of was a problem?
I can speak to it.
Yeah.
I had to have a full hip replacement about 8 years ago, 8 or 9 years ago. And I'm a tough cookie, so I don't like feeling weak in any capacity. And I needed help with everything. And I'm not used to feeling like that. I'm used to carrying whatever it is, whatever family, whatever. I'm happy to bear it all, whatever. But with that moment, I did not have a choice. I had to have help in the bathroom, to help in the shower, everything. And I was lashing out instead of being vulnerable and saying, babe, I really need your help. But the way my husband showed up in that moment helped me to open up to the vulnerability, to say, thank you. And let's keep it moving, because I don't want to stay stuck too long in that vulnerability. But it did help me open up to see where I wasn't acknowledging vulnerability, because it's sort of I don't know, maybe it's societal, cultural. Women often are sort of assigned to be strong in moments, and we just have to carry in certain moments. And so I was forced into a situation where I could not do it physically. And so it allowed us to have a different type of connection where I had to rely on my husband 100% just to do the day-to-day things. And so I think it helped us to grow in our, allowance of vulnerability with each other.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you a follow-up. Do you feel like as a black woman, black women's hyper independence versus black men's overwhelming desire to like be masculine, and do you feel like that's some of the head button situation that goes on? Like we got to learn to, hey, I can lead some things, and you don't have to lead everything. I mean, am I making sense?
Yes, I think there's definitely a balance. So I'm not saying I have to lead in every capacity. Absolutely not. But when it comes to being able to take care of myself, I think that just sort of the way that we culturally are raised as women, we're sort of taught, you need to be able to go take a shower, girl.
Yeah.
So not being able to just do that small thing kind of opened me up to be a little bit more, I don't know, accepting towards having help, because we don't usually ask for help all the time. So it gave us that open communication to be able to say, hey, I need help right now. And it made it feel acceptable in that moment.
Yeah. I appreciate you being vulnerable, talking about that moment. That was a great thing. Khalil, let me ask you, man, when you talk about the adults in your life and the examples being set for you, what are some of the things that either you wish, that was talked about more while you were growing up, or some things that you appreciate that were talked about that help you kind of navigate what it is to like be a family man? You're in a family right now. You know what I mean? At a young age, you a family man. So some things that you wish you would have known, or somebody would have told you about that you had to learn on the job, or are you grateful for some things that you were told?
Yeah. Man, I learned a lot from a lot of different people in my life. I say one being my stepfather, who kind of raised me growing up. Him and my mom, they got married when I was about 10, and he just instilled a lot of values in me that went a long way as far as being a man first and foremost. All you have is your word, standing on your word, being accountable. That was a big thing every day that he told me. Was accountability is everything. You got to be able to take accountability for what you've done, and it stuck with me all these years. Even to this day, I still have that. So I would say, accountability, patience, being able to learn with your partner, being able to grow with your partner. I felt like at the beginning, I was real independent as far as the relationship went. I kind of just wanted to be the only one that was in control of everything. I was a man. I'm like, bills, eating, going out to eat, whatever the case may be. I wanted to be in control of it. But soon I seen how much of a toll it took on me mentally. And for me to be able to just come back to my partner and let her know, hey, I need some help. Like, I know, I got you, but I need some help right now. That was something that, again, just me being vulnerable to her and opening up and actually expressing myself. As far as some things I wish I would have known, I'm kind of still learning as I go, Coach. Honestly, there's not too many things that I would say I wish I just would have known, but I'm just learning as I go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ain't scratched your surface yet, my boy.
Yeah, I must not had too many deep arguments enough yet or something. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I ain't want to have no unk moments with you on the pod.
Real.
I'm just
gonna learn every day.
I remember the time.
Yep.
Out here ripping and running, man. Jason, so how do you stay emotionally connected to this man during tough times?
Like you said, we're still figuring that out. But I will say, like, during my pregnancy and after my pregnancy was like probably our biggest test. And just going back to that friendship, like if we didn't have that, then like we would probably hate each other by now. But it's just like we took the time to. None of our arguments have ever just been serious when we go back to the root problem. So it's like we have to talk about that in order to figure that out. Like anytime, and I feel like I had to learn vulnerability myself. Just I can't remember the exact question you asked earlier, but the independence of Black women bumping heads with the masculine nature of Black men. Khalil's over like, like, I feel like to a certain extent that's something that we battled a little bit with.
For sure.
It was hard for me, you know, after I gave birth, I wasn't working or anything, so I wasn't making any money for myself. So, you know, he was taking care of everything, but nonetheless, I kind of felt not as useful, just by my own standard. Not that he was making me feel that way, but I would kind of like take it out on him. Like, I'm not used to just sitting at home cleaning up after everything gets dirty, and like that's not what I'm used to doing. I'm used to like, you know, working and, you know, making moves for myself. So it was kind of hard for me to just sit back and take on that new role that I've never really navigated before. But I had to find vulnerability in that, and I feel like we ended up working through all of those things, but he had to learn how to treat me more gently. And same to me. I had to extend the same grace, like you said. He was stressed out. I wasn't working. We just had a kid. This is like a whole bunch of new worlds that we were entering at one time. So we both had to extend each other a certain amount of grace during that period. So
no, you're gonna be all right. I like it. I'm gonna say I like it. I'm gonna get back to it in a minute. But that brought a question to me, Dr. Curtis. You know, you like I said, we see couples, man, and oftentimes they can be married for 20 plus years and have never, you know, dove into the traumatic past that they have as individuals and how it's showing up in their everyday relationship. So I want to ask you like when you think about you know, the time you spent with couples, what and the impact of the trauma, you know, their past relationships and the current relation, how important is it to dive in, and why is it important to dive into your partner's trauma?
Yeah, good. It's extremely important. I mean, you know, remember now, you're in connection with someone, in a relationship with someone, and so what you do impacts them, what they do impacts you, and then certainly based upon what your partner's experience has been in terms of any kind of trauma that they've had in their lives. And believe it or not, we all have it. It's just what degree it is, what's the degree of that trauma that we experienced. And so in essence, that's your way of being able to understand or be more empathetic towards your partner when something does come up, because it's a trigger, right? You know, there could be any combination of things that may be surfacing in your partner's life that will quote unquote show up, and it'll show up in the oddest or strangest or most untraditional ways, right? And when that occurs, unfortunately, what happens is the fact that, you know, you get into this here quote unquote finger pointing, or you get into something emerges in your relationship that causes a disconnect, right? So I think it's important for you to be able to do that. I think what happens is the fact that that also requires what? Vulnerability, though, right? You can't quote unquote have a heavy traumatic life issue in your life and you with somebody that's supposed to be that you know, your person per se, right? And you can't even share that with them because unfortunately it's already lodged in your memory. It's part of your memory bank. It's there. It's in that Rolodex about, you know, all it takes is an association for that trauma and that hurt and that pain from whatever that trauma was to come back up and surface. So I think that's why it's important that you, quote unquote, be able to kind of, you know, have these type of conversations. I think couples, when they first start out, they really don't want to have those type of conversations because it makes you look like you may be weak, or it makes you look like, hey, no, you can't handle it, or it makes you look like, hey, I'm not carrying the load. I'm not being the man, or I'm not being the woman that I should be, simply because of the fact of this trauma that I experienced. And you hide that. You hide behind that trauma, believe it or not, even in your dynamics of your relationship. So yeah, it's huge that, hey, that you invest in one another and quote unquote knowing a little bit about that trauma. Okay. It makes a world of a difference in terms of long term, in terms of your relationship.
Yeah.
For sure.
And let me add to them gems too, man. We talking about emotional triggers. A lot of times we don't understand that these emotional triggers occur, you know, long before we meet our partners. I mean, long before we even adults or even teenagers, like early on in life. And most of the time we don't even know they're there. We don't know why we escalate. But every single time I'm in session with a couple and, you know, I'm asking them to replay a disagreement that they had without, if they can get into it without tearing each other's heads off, let's go ahead and replay it. And I'm always bouncing on the same point. When did it escalate? Okay. So when did you feel like you were about to elevate and go completely left? We need to talk about that moment. What is it about that moment that upset you so much that, you know, you started yelling and screaming or whatever? And then we can figure out what it is. Most times, you know, it's simple stuff. We arguing about, I don't know, not doing the dishes or something, and you guys are full on yelling at each other about some dishes. You're not arguing about them dishes.
Right.
You're not arguing about them. It's something completely different. It's an emotional trigger inside of you. You know, like, oh, he shut down. He didn't talk to me. He walked away. And that's when I started, you know, keying his car. Okay, well, what? He looking like, why do you have to go that far? What is it about me, you know, not having a conversation? Oh, when I was younger, you know, my dad left. He never came back. He didn't talk to me. Oh, okay. So when you shut down, you don't talk to me. That's an emotional trigger for me. Okay. I need you to be present. If you need a break, I need you to communicate. I need 10, 15 minutes or an hour or so to calm down. But I'm dropping gems for y'all in the chat. You always have to come back. Okay.
Sure.
Two things can be true. We don't need to have this conversation right now, but we got to have it eventually. And we got to be able to talk. I can't argue with you about your feelings. If you feel frustrated, if you feel sad, I can't argue with you about your feelings. You feel that way. It is my job to understand why you feel that way and make sure that I'm not doing any of the things that are causing those feelings.
Yeah.
That's what we got to communicate. It's not just, oh, you just got to, you know, suck it up or, you know, man up on that, you know. That's not what we're doing. We having conversations to try to understand each other. So let me ask y'all, man. No, I was hoping my wife was going to be here to talk to me, but like, can you describe, you know, like a time when like sharing your fears or insecurities like brought y'all closer together? Can you think about something like Q or Jatoya? Do you remember a time where like you're like, okay, let me dive into this?
Yeah. So like me, I used to like my mom and my stepdad, they used to argue almost every night. So I thought I was combating that by like, if we would have any type of little raised voice or whatever, I'd just walk away. I wouldn't say nothing. I try to come back later and be like, well, you know, let's just end that. And she's like, no, but we didn't talk about it. And I always used to be mad, like, I don't want to talk about that no more because I didn't want us to start arguing, not knowing that I was triggering her more by not listening to exactly, you know, what she had to say. But I thought I was combating that trauma from my childhood and, you know, seeing them argue every single day. And I didn't want to go through that at all. So I felt like that made us way more closer to where I'll start listening and, you know, trying to talk out the feelings, you know what I'm saying? And then like I always talk about this every time I'm on the cast, and I was able to go get therapy myself for a different reason and then unpacked a lot of that stuff where I knew, okay, now I have to be vulnerable. This is the only way we gonna get closer, you know, unless I tell her exactly what's going on with me.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that therapy unlocks some stuff, don't it?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, you from the South Side?
North side.
North Side Chicago?
Yeah.
Was they talking about therapy on the North Side of Chicago when you was growing up?
Man, you know they wasn't. You know they wasn't. It wasn't no therapy, bro.
What made you dive in there though? What made you go get the therapy?
Man, I told you, man, like I was broken, man. My son almost died and my niece. Like you know, they almost drowned. My son got hypothermia, my niece was in a coma. Like I was broken because I wasn't there. You know,
How did
like
you know I can't do this alone? I gotta get. How did you know? Like what behavior was coming up?
I was angry. I was angry. I was angry. I was so angry. It was probably the angriest I ever been in my life, but I was angry. Like about anything.
Was it in your
Why is
relationship?
it snow on the window? Anything. I was just angry.
Was it showing up in your relationship with your wife?
Yeah, a little bit. Yep. I was shut down, but then I was also being too confrontational.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so yeah, it showed up there, it showed up at work. I was getting into arguments with coworkers. So yeah.
Khalil, Jay, neither one of y'all ever been in therapy?
I tried. I don't even want to say try because I just went to like 1 or 2 sessions with like 2 different therapists, and I just didn't really feel it. I wasn't really feeling like there was going to be any solving anything, at least just with with their approach to therapy. Mm-hmm. I fully believe that therapy, like anybody could benefit from therapy. I just feel like those weren't the therapists for me, and I just never, honestly, I didn't have the money to try again. But yeah, it's still something I'd be open to.
Okay, I don't know, Khalil. So I heard in the streets you be ducking therapy, but I don't know that for sure.
Hey, I'm ducking. I'm ducking all the way. I want
to tell on you, but I heard you be ducking.
I'll be completely transparent with you. I've never been one to just say I'm gonna go to therapy. But I'll tell you one thing I did. Therapy was brought up to me through Jaden. Jaden told me that that I need to go to therapy, and that's what you know. At first, it threw me off. It irritated me a little bit, but when I sat back and thought about what she actually said about as far as just unpacking past trauma and everything like that, I actually reached out. I reached out to you, Coach. That was the day that we got on our little consultation, and I didn't hold up my end of the bargain. Yeah. On that part, so I ain't even gonna throw Coach out there. Right. But I could tell you one thing. You know, if when I do decide to make that decision, you know, I know exactly who I'm coming to, and he knows who I'm coming to as well. So yeah. I'm open for it 100% now.
Man, I want to say real quick, it's a hard decision, man. Like I didn't choose to like, all right, I'm gonna go find a therapist. It was offered to me by my job, and it took me a while until I started noticing my behavior and her noticing my behavior while I was like, you know what, I'm gonna take them up on this offer. So I got 3 free sessions, and you know, she was wonderful, like in the end, you know, so it's a hard thing to like do yourself. Sometimes you need to be forced into it. Yep. Kind of how my situation was.
And you have to find the right person for you. I'm a huge proponent of therapy, but you might have to try a few people before the right connection happens.
Absolutely.
For sure.
I appreciate that, y'all.
No, I cycled through a gang of therapists before I don't want to say I landed on one. I was forced. You know, I've been communicative about. I broke down, ended up in a mental hospital, and I met my therapist through that experience, and we clicked through that, and we've been rocking ever since. But I had tried 4 or 5 people. I just knew I wasn't right. I wasn't willing to, like, you know, as a family man, I know I got kids, I got a wife. I knew I wasn't right. I wasn't willing to like repeat some of the behaviors that I experienced in my childhood. I was like, I'm not gonna go through this. We're gonna break this generational cycle somehow, some way. So I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna keep going. But Dr. Curtis, man, how important is it, man, when you're talking, you know, you're thinking about especially young people, you know what I mean? Just starting out. How important is it to, or what are some tips or some important, you know, tools that young people can pick up that's going to help them kind of avoid some of the pitfalls that you see all these old couples fall into?
That's a good question. I think it's just, you know, we have to understand in life and even in therapy, it's a developmental process. You know, what starts out might be, you know, you can, you know, click with someone and it's just fantastic. And it works really, really well. But then, you know, you may have to bump around, you know, to find someone that's a good fit. The goal here is to trust yourself. I love what my what Brother Q was saying is that learning how to take yourself on. It's when you don't want to take yourself on that this becomes a challenge. So one of those tips I'm gonna put out there for those who are quote unquote questioning about the possibility of going to therapy. Think about what this looks like in terms of your physical body, right? You know, we typically have to go to the doctor, right? Or we should anyway. And that's an issue in and of itself for Black men. Let me go ahead and say that. Not wanting to go to the doctor, right? But you should be going to the doctor at least a minimum, at least twice a year, right? But the goal of doing that is to what? Doing an assessment in terms of where you are in terms of your physical health. Well, guess what? You also have a mental health issue as well. You got to actually what? Go and check on your what? Mental health. And what happens, just like the stigma of going and see a quote unquote, a physical, quote unquote, a medical doctor for your physical health, it's also important to go and see someone for your what? Your mental health as well. Because I will say this, we all have those issues in our life. And I like to kind of look at it like this, because we all have stress. And because we all have stress in our lives, you know, it's, you know, how are we going to manage those stresses? Because we're going to deal with it on some form or fashion. Unfortunately, typically when you don't quote unquote address that stress, eventually that stress will graduate to some form of anxiety. Okay. And unfortunately, when you quote unquote, you're in the anxiety ridden state perpetually long term, that turns into what? Depression. So understand it's a stress step, believe it or not. That stress unchecked and not dealt with on any level, and it could be any combination of things that's causing that stress to what? To develop in our lives. But if you quote unquote don't have a formula, a roadmap per se to be able to kind of address that stress and put something in place, guess what happens? What happens is the fact that eventually, quote unquote, it leads to you to start dealing with anxiety. And when that anxiety mushrooms, it gets to be that much more difficult for you. I kind of like to use that in working with couples, whether that you're old or young, to understand that, okay, these are part of those issues in this thing called life. We all have to deal with it on some form or fashion. And the other thing I think that's important is the fact that I believe we make other people counselors anyway. We go to our crew, you know, we go to our partner, we go to our girl and so forth, and we actually making them become our counselors, believe it or not. And they really not equipped to fully address all the things that you're dealing with and what you're going through. So I think if you're conscious of that and say, you know what, I think I have been trying to make somebody my pseudo therapist and not realizing that. But that's how it used to be in the Black community. You used to go to what? The elder in the family, right? Whoever that was, whether it's grandma or grandpa, that was your therapist. So you don't have to do that anymore. Yeah, hey, that, you know, it's okay, quote unquote, to go and see a therapist. That doesn't mean you crazy, right? It don't mean you crazy if you go and see a therapist. So I think if you can kind of leverage some of that, that will help you in the long run.
Right. But I mean, also it's important, right, for you know, couples to be proactive too sometimes, right? Like, okay, before these things start, I'm feeling a way. I mean, I'm not beating my partner up about it. I'm feeling a way though, and I need to deal with it. You know, I don't know how to deal with it. What do I do? What am I doing with this energy? So I'm gonna ask you, Dr. Curtis, like, you know, young couple comes in like Khalil and Jay near, they're not married yet. You know, they're thinking about it. Like, where do you start with a couple like that typically?
I'd really kind of start with the idea of just asking, okay, well, you know, where do you see yourself? You know, where do you see yourself at some point in the future? I think that's going to be more important than anything else, because if you don't have any vision or any kind of outlook about where you want to go or what you want to do, well, you know, you can't formulate a plan in terms of how to get there. You know, I'm one of those therapists that I think that even for yourself or anyone else, you really got to say, you know what, I'm not quite sure I know what it is. I know something is bothering me or something I'm struggling with on some level. And maybe that's, you know, I want to start there. I want to start with, you know, just trying to get a sense. And typically, you know, it's just a matter of pulling on that thread. You can pull on that thread. And this is a good therapist. If they're a good therapist, they can pull on that thread and then it will come out. Believe it or not, it's amazing. I'll spend time in therapy, especially with couples, and whether that's you just been dating or you've been dating long term or even quote unquote you've been married or you just got married or been married a long period of time. there are some issues that kind of come up. We don't think about how it impacts us until what? It just hits it all at one time. And we don't know where it comes from. And we've talked a little bit about that tonight as well, right? About the idea of how, Lord, those childhood wounds that has occurred in our lives and how they're still present. And what happens is that it show up in our adult life in terms of how we relate, and all those patterns that we've actually, quote unquote, have developed because of what? Our early childhood, you know, and you said this earlier, Joe, talking about that unmet need, right? You know, we have these unmet needs in our life, but they're normally what? Cultivated and developed in what? In our early childhood. And those unmet needs we bring into our adult relationships, and typically it's going to cause friction. Yeah. We are challenged because we have what? Tension and stress and so forth in our relationship. But we have to understand that's just about conflict, but conflict is what? Growth trying to happen. You have to see it that way. If you don't see that conflict is growth trying to happen, you're going to be a miserable person, because the reality is conflict is what? It's inevitable. You're going to have it on a consistent basis throughout your relationship. So learn how to work through your conflict in a healthy way. That's how it's going to get you what? To kind of move the needle per se for what you really want to do and where you want to be as far as your life is concerned.
Man, super dope. Jaden, Khalil, y'all pick up any of that? Are you have any feedback for y'all?
I'm over here telling them, I said, Dr. Curtis over here speaking right now. I said, hey, I like this guy. I like him, but yeah, I'm picking all that up. I'm relating to all of what he's saying, especially unpacking that trauma in your childhood, and how if you don't, how it can come out later on in the relationship. I feel it 100%.
Right. Have y'all had that conversation about, you know, vision for the future and all of that?
All the time.
Yeah, I think that's something we probably talk about every day.
Yeah, I could tell by the way y'all move. Y'all kind of moving in a way that looks like y'all unified.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something we talked about. We got vision boards. We try to journal. You know, we pray together. We try to do everything as one, and just try to make sure that our actions are aligning with what it is that we envision for ourselves.
Do you have moments where you don't necessarily feel comfortable sometimes having conversations about stuff you're going through individually?
Before for sure. Probably about a year ago, yeah, I would say. If you ask me today, I don't think it's nothing. It's probably nothing that I don't feel like I couldn't come to her about at this point in our relationship.
Great thing, man.
I feel like it's an open book with me.
Yeah, man. I definitely didn't figure that out this early. I'm gonna tell you that right now. I'm gonna be 100% honest with you. I was hiding everything for no reason. I was lying about stupid stuff. Who left this cabinet open? I'm lying about stupid stuff for no reason. I just forgot to close the cabinet, and I'm gonna say that I forgot. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, just little stupid stuff like that, man. So I commend you, brother, and young Jaden for, you know, understanding some of the things that you're understanding right now. Sure. Dr. Curtis, what about one of these old ass couples like Q and Jatoya come in and
you know, man, we only 42, man.
Yeah, hold on, man. 42. And I tell you, look, I told you I knew the girls when she was 10. All right, I know.
Yeah, I can't lie. I'm 44, bro. I feel old, but I know I'm not.
Yeah, no, you're not old, man. I'm just joking, man. But they come in, you know what I mean, and they are, you know, having done some of this foundational work that you hear Jaden and Khalil have done. Like, tell me where you start, you know, with a couple like that, man.
Yeah, I think that the issue there in terms of what you're dealing with, if I was dealing with a a much older couple in terms of, you know, they got some life behind them, you know, children, family, and so forth. So for them, it's a little bit different, because now we're just saying, okay, how can we sustain and develop and still grow? It's when you think that, hey, that you done got to that point where you've made it. I think that's when it's you need to be careful. It's kind of like I hear couples talk about things. Well, yeah, we really love each other so much to the point where we can finish each other's sentences and so forth. And you might, and that's fine. But all that really means is the fact that, hey, that you didn't become so comfortable with your partner that, hey, that you're not allowing any kind of quote unquote tension to develop in your relationship. I use the word creative tension in your relationship, because it's not that, hey, that you're not going to have, quote unquote, again, as I said earlier, conflict, but it's learning how to work through that conflict in a healthy way. You're going to have that heated fellowship. I'm sorry. That's just all that is. Even as an older couple, you're going to have some heated fellowship. And part of what happens in that heated fellowship is having a roadmap about how to get through. How quickly do you repair when there's a rupture in your relationship? You know, and sometimes that could be a small rupture, but sometimes it could be big, right? But the relationships that thrive and make the most and grow is learning how to work through, quote unquote, when they do have a rupture in a relationship, that how quickly they repair. So you mentioned this a little bit earlier, Joe, about the idea that, you know, you get upset, you get a little swole, get a little salty, and what happens is that your emotions are up here, right? You're upset, you hot at your partner. Unfortunately, when you bring in your energy is up here, guess what happens? Your intellect, it drops. And we don't think about what's happening. Like, okay, you're trying to make decisions and choices and so forth about what's going on, and your emotions are way up here. You really do need that time to kind of break away. But I think it's a plan. It's important to put a plan in place when that occurs. When you recognize and realize, hey, that now is not a good time to have a conversation, because, you know, I may be so hot with myself, or I may be so hot with my wife or my partner, whatever the case may be. And you want to use that time to say, hey, I call it tapping out. Some people call it time out. I say learn how to tap out. And when you do tap out, what happens, have some ground rules associated with that. When you tap out, make sure you do say, hey, I'm going to tap out. And then some people like to tap out and they stay on premise. Sometimes people like to tap out and they're like, I'm just going to take a walk, or I'm going to go to the gym, or I'm gonna get a mani, I'm gonna get a petty, whatever it is, right? Kind of self-regulate. That's really all you're really doing. You want to give yourself that space so you can say, go and self-regulate. But remember this: the person that taps out got to always tap back in. Your partner shouldn't be running behind you to get you to talk about an issue that you decide to sweep under the rug. That's not how this is supposed to work. So I think that's one thing that you can do. Develop some ground rules around when you do get in that space in the heated fellowship, what you're going to do when you're at that point where, hey, that you got to be very careful not to talk to one another when you're really not ready. You know, we call it client readiness, right? You know, we know how ready is that client to have a conversation about something that may be hard or may be difficult and so forth. And there'll be other elements associated with that. But certainly if there's a lot of anger that's there as well, you need to have time to separate. So you just let your partner say, hey, babe, you know, put some sugar on it. Hey, love. Hey, sweetheart. Hi, honey. Okay, I'm going to tap out, and then say, hey, this is where I'm going to tap out. I'm going to tap out for this amount of time. This is where I'm going to be, and this is what I'm going to be doing. When you can just put some of those basic things in place like that, it really strengthens your relationship. So the next time you have that heated fellowship, you know that no anxious attachment that's developed. Oh, I don't know where she's going. I don't know where he's going. No, all that has been communicated, that's been presented, and you know what? You can still trust that your partner's going they're going to tap back in there, and you're going to work through that issue. So that's really what I actually kind of present, even for older couples, because they have some of these pieces in place, but there's some other things they could do to kind of strengthen that.
Right. Yeah, no, it has to be important. And what he said was very important. I want you to understand. If your partner is someone who has an anxious attachment and they can't trust, when you walk away, you build that trust by making sure that you come back every time, or you communicate that you are coming back, and you communicate that you need to walk away for a second. You don't just walk away. Look, I need to walk away. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling frustrated. I will come back and talk to you about this. Okay. So you don't, and then you have to come back. Because if you don't come back, then you're just going to erode that relationship even further, and that trust is going to lessen even more, and then that person is going to be even more anxious and more insecure, and they're not going to feel safe in a relationship, and it's going to go all bad, right? So that's thank you, Dr. Curtis, man, for dropping some more of those gems. It's very important. I want everybody to in the chat. Listen, we got about 400 people out there now. Listen, if you got a question, now's the time to drop it, because we're about to start wrapping it up. And if you don't have a question, man, please drop in what some of your takeaways from the night are, man. I'm really hoping that we're doing something here tonight. We could talk about this forever. We got a short window. I really want to get these people in and out in an hour. Otherwise, they don't want to be my guest no more. But, you know what I mean? Please, what are your takeaways? I'm trying to do a 4-part series that involves every couples of all stages in their relationship to take away something from this situation. I really do. So wrapping it up, Toy and Q, let me ask y'all, basically 17 years, nothing to shake a stick at, man. That's a long time. 3 kids. I said 4 last time. Donna slapped me for that. My bad. I gave y'all an extra kid.
It's okay.
But 3 kids, 17 years, you know.
Married.
Married. Yeah, together for more than 20, right?
24.
24, right. So what's something you want to tell people? How do y'all stay connected through all that time? You know what I mean? And still like turn towards each other and get along with each other and not just in it, for the sake of the kids or because what's what you used to. Like, how do y'all stay connected over 17 of them or 20 something of them? I should 24 years, I should say.
Go.
To me, music and laughter is really important. Sometimes if it's just contentious, I liked what Dr. Curtis said about hostile fellowship. We do that a lot. But if you turn on a song that kind of brings you back to some of that early love or put on a movie that brings out some laughter. We have some go-to films that we watch that we just know every word to the film.
Like?
Life. Harlem Nights. There's a few. Yeah, there's a few we have in our arsenal. Mm-hmm. It kind of gives like a common ground where we can reconnect emotionally. But we're friends, and I think that is a really important key thing. And I also think like you have to just not be complacent. My husband says that all the time. Like, we're not going to be complacent with each other, period. So we talk through things. And then when we do have that hostile fellowship, we also bring that back to our children to tell them how we resolved the conflict. So I think that we're bringing that hopefully into the future about how you do that. We don't try to ignore anything that we're disagreeing about. We just try to really resolve it. But there were a lot of gems that were dropped today that I'm definitely taking back. I don't know what you want to share, babe.
Yeah, I love everything that the doctor was saying, man. Like, that tap out time and putting some rules behind that. I love that. That was a good takeaway. I know sometimes like what we do, if we have a spat, sometimes we come back and don't say nothing and we just meditate, True. So like that's one of the good things. Like Khalil was saying, we journal sometimes. So like those are all good things to do. But yeah, like that tap out and come back. I like that.
Yeah, man. For sure. Even in the moments where, it's gonna happen where you like, I want to leave this situation. I want to tap out. I want to get up out of here. You know what I mean? It happens. And I always like to tell people there's going to be moments like that, man. But, what team are you actually playing for? You know what I mean? Like, at the end of the day, what are you actually arguing about? We all want the same things. If we truly in love with each other, we want the same things. We might disagree about how to get these things or which way to go. You might want to, shoot threes all day, and I might just want to go to the paint, whatever. But we both want to score, right? And we both want to score for the same team. So how we gonna manage that? We got to talk. Sometimes we got to shoot the three. Sometimes we got to dump it in. All right, and that's just the way it's gonna be because we all want the same thing. We a team, and I ain't going no damn where. Sorry,
right? We ain't breaking up.
Yeah, we go together. We go together, real bad. I ain't going nowhere. You ain't going nowhere. So either we gonna die or we
you silly, bro.
We gonna get to this conversation. What's the plan? All right.
Facts.
So takeaways, man. Khalil, Jaden, man, I want to talk about, some of the takeaways y'all might have. And, I feel like, any insider gems y'all want to drop, because I really feel like for young people, y'all haven't figured out. I mean, I was not in this mindset at all in my 20s, in my late 20s, only early 20s. So I was in my late 20s.
Figure it out.
Wasn't figuring out nothing. Wasn't figuring out nothing. So what are y'all taking away, man? What are y'all, any gems y'all want to drop?
Well, we definitely still have a lot of figuring out to do, obviously. My takeaway from this is just that we're always going to have something to work through, something to work towards. And it's all about what you're willing to do to make it work. Just continuing to date each other and get to know each other as years go by, and each evolve and progress, making that a priority to keep our connection alive in order to make sure our foundation is solid at all times. And I really did like the phrase that Dr. Curtis mentioned, the tap out. We've been trying to figure out some type of phrase for whenever things get heated and we need to bring it back. So we'll definitely be using that one. But yeah, that's my takeaway.
What about you?
I had a lot of great takeaways from the conversation. One, just investing into your partner. You gotta invest it to them. You can't do it alone. So, the more you pour into them, I feel like the better the relationship will be. The longer it'll probably last, But yeah, I definitely say that tap out rule, that's something that we've been trying to figure out, something that we can kind of tell each other to just, hey, let's come back to this at a later time. We both heated, this conversation ain't gonna go nowhere right now. Let's come back to it. And then as far as any advice to any younger couples, I'd say it's all about what you want. Like, it is really about, if you want it, you'll make it happen. If you want to be with the person that you with, you're gonna make it happen despite of what's going on, circumstances, the trauma, all of it. You're gonna figure out a way to work through it. You got to extend the person that you're with that amount of grace. What you may think is right may not be right to them. So you guys got to come to each other and just hear both sides, both perspectives. Because 9 times out of 10, both perspectives are probably right. They just came off a little in the heat of the moment, and I felt this way and you felt that way. But at the end of the day, like Coach Joe said, it's feelings. Like you got to be accepting of those feelings. If they're feeling this type of way, then that's just what it is. Regardless if you felt like you did something to make them feel that way or not, they're feeling it. So you got to address it. You got to talk about it, and just communication. That's major. You got to communicate with your partner.
100%, man. And I'm gonna add something to that, man. Last year, my good brother, I hope he's still watching. My good brother Mike Pruitt, man, he told me, we had a conversation. He talked to me about, life after children. You get so locked in on being those kids' parents that you don't know how to function with each other once the kids leave. You know what I mean? Like, I want y'all to understand and always know, like, I mean, it's great that y'all Halo's parents, but y'all, and y'all always gonna be Halo's parents, but she ain't always gonna be around. So, make sure your connection is beyond just being, because you can get really tied into, being parents.
Right.
And you stop remembering what it is to just be with each other outside of taking care of them kids. You know what I mean? And I hope you, Big Mike, hope you listening, brother.
Big Mike,
you bigging me up on that, man, because I had never thought about that till he put that in my head. Me and Donna spent several years just being like, Devin's parents. And when he stopped playing high school sports, we was like,
what do we do now?
What do we do now?
Yeah.
No, we hadn't figured it out, man. So just a little gem. And both these couples will be back later in the week, later in the month at different times. So y'all get to talk to them about different aspects of this 4-part series, man. I really want y'all to be locked in on what we're doing, man. We talking about conflict. We talking about, the art of turning towards each other. And then we're going to talk about shared meaning and future goals. And hopefully we can, help people stay together, man. We we trying to, you know, decrease the divorce rate, especially in our community, man. We don't
Black love.
We want Black love to prosper, man, because we need each. It's basically what it's inspired me is we need each other, man, in a bad way. You know, I tried to do an episode on gender wars last week. It didn't go how I wanted it to go, but I think the conversation towards the end, my brother Khalil carried. So thank you, man, for doing what you did last week, because I was about to get but you carried me, man. I appreciate you, man.
In your face, coach. You all good.
So Dr. Curtis, man, you got something going on, man. I want to give you an opportunity to talk about you know, making love make sense. You got a workshop coming up. And you know, it's a beautiful thing. Like I said, I want to give you your flowers, man. You've been a consistent mentor for me, and always being there when I need a hand up or I need some understanding, especially in this therapy game. You've been doing it a lot longer than I have, and you always got some good insight for me. So I want to give you an opportunity to talk about your workshop, brother.
Yeah. This is going to be happening, and actually, we have it set up the week after Valentine's Day. So, of course, Valentine's Day is 14th and 15th. So the week after that, we're trying to extend Valentine's Day by actually having this here workshop. We're having it, it'll be like a 4-hour workshop. It's on a Saturday, the 22nd of February. We'll be located downtown Dallas in the Common Desk on the 7th floor. Nice view and so forth. If you get a chance to go out there on, I think that's Ticket Magic. That's what the where it is, where you can actually get that information. I'm gonna be doing that session with my partner, Dr. Robin Jordan. So she's an LMFT. You know, I'm and she all about love. So, but we kind of talked about trying to pull this whole thing together, and we really kind of feel like, hey, we want to kind of put something out there, and we're going to use a different type of a curriculum. The curriculum is how to get the love you want, and so you'll get a chance to get a workbook. You get a chance to develop a vision for your relationship, and that's whether or not you're married, not married, and so forth. You're dating. This will be good to come and show up. And now, if you say, hey, I just need to prepare myself for getting in a relationship, you can come. Unfortunately, you got to pay for two. Because it's still gonna be $200. So yeah, you can come as a single person and learn. Yeah, but your cost is gonna really be the same. It's still gonna be $200 per couple, whether you come as yourself and your imaginary or your boo to be, right? So anyway, but we're really gonna have a good time. We're gonna serve you a little light, breakfast that morning. And we're gonna serve you a lunch before you get out there, and we're gonna throw some really strong gems at you that we think that's going to be lasting for your relationship. So that's my little commercial. And can I throw one more thing out there, Joe, real quick?
One more thing out there, man. So go ahead and do that.
Okay. Yeah, y'all talked about this is for both of you couples and anyone else that's out there. And I learned a whole lot from just listening to other couples as well. And so I've learned some things from other couples that I think that's extremely important. We always talk about the idea it's still important to always date your partner. And I think Joe was just talking about when the children are gone or they got up in age, but you still should be dating one another all along the way. So the thing is that rather than just saying date night, what I ask couples to at least seek to try to do is develop you a date bowl, a date jar, something along those lines. And what's different about how I set that up for you is I say, hey, when you in your date bowl and your date jar, you decide whether you want that to be once a week or twice a month or whatever you decide. But each partner have to write down and develop what that ideal date is. Okay, that way you know something about your partner. So that means you're not really, you may say, hey, I want to kind of build a date that I think is cool and so forth. And that's great. You can do that. The other part I ask you to do is that I ask you to put a budget on it. Budget what that date is. So of course, for the more mature, the 17-year-old, well, their budget might be a little bit higher than yours, Khalil. Your budget might be a little less than theirs. But I think that's important because it allows you to be creative in terms of how you establish your dates and so forth, because you got a budget and that way you're going to be consistent as well. So that's number one. The second thing I want to kind of leave with you, and again, this is stuff I learned from other couples as well, is that I heard one sister say, you know, what I did for my partner is that I started what we call hubby day. Hubby day is simply, quote unquote, once a month, and it's on the date that your husband was born. Okay, so if his birthday, for instance, mine was on.
Yeah.
So, but that's once a month where you focus specifically what on that day for your partner, right? But guess what? It's not just a hubby day. There's also a what? A wifey day. There you go. It's a wifey day. Hello. A wifey day. That whatever that birthday, whatever that day of what that your woman was born on, that's her day. And you want to make sure that, hey, that you treat her special on that particular day, once a month and so forth. And of course, that just makes it much easier when you get to their birthday. Those are two things, just for little practical things you could do, kind of put in place to make it fun, make it exciting and so forth, and what helps to strengthen your relationship.
Yeah, I like that. I like that.
We like that, Dr. Curtis.
Dropping them gems. And listen, if you didn't catch the flyer, you know, this whole episode is on YouTube. You know, let's see what your pause game is like. Go back and you know, watch the episode, and you can write down all the stuff that Dr. Curtis was saying. If I said anything that moved you, you can write down some of that stuff, or any of the couple said anything that you know related to. You know, go back and write it down, and tap in for the rest of the month too, because you know we're gonna be here talking about building bonds and relationships that are long lasting. And all I'm gonna say is, you know, when you're talking about emotional connection, just spend as much time, you know, talking about the things that you admire and appreciate about your partner. Double that up over the time that you spend talking about the things that frustrate you and annoy you. But you have to talk about both. You know what I mean? It's important to you know, create, I don't want to say a balance, because you want to have more gratitude in your situation than anything, because you're with that person for a reason. And if you are with that person, you're not going anywhere, they're not going anywhere, then you actually having conflict with each other consistently and not dealing with it is illogical, right?
For sure.
So find your way to turn towards each other. Like I said, we're gonna be here all month talking about these relationships. Yes, I need y'all to tap in. I need y'all to get in here, especially the Black men. I need y'all to get in here and talk about some of the hurdles and the challenges that y'all are facing in relationship. There's a lot of things, brothers, that we have to unlearn in order to show up for these women the way that they needed to show up. And, you know, pour into them so that they can pour it back into us, because we cannot do it separately. All right. We just can't. You know, we need the Black family now in these times more than ever. Okay. And whatever that looks like for you, you know, whatever that looks like for you, that's fine. I'm not here to judge any of that, but I really think we need to figure out a way to connect. All right. That's all I got. Good night, y'all. As normal, as always, love y'all, and I can't wait to see y'all next Tuesday to talk about.
Thanks for having us, Joe.
Appreciate it, Coach. And Dr.